This is episode 13 of the 99 Forever podcast. I'm Eric Friesen, and joining me tonight is blogger with Rect Hockey, Kirk Morris. Kirk, how's it going tonight, man?
Pretty good, Eric. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure. I know it's probably a busy Mother's Day for everyone, but I'm glad that you could find time to talk a little hockey tonight.
Oh, yeah, you betcha, man.
It's there's not a lot of hockey going on with we're still probably a couple months away from the playoffs being resumed, but did you happen to watch any of the 1987 Canada Cup on TSN tonight?
Yeah, you betcha. And speaking of which, I got it on the television here right now as I speak. And man, oh man, you gotta hand it to the Soviets. They threw every puck they could and every wrench into Canada's game. Like you know what, you could almost say that the Soviets with their defense was kind of like a trap, and trying to stifle Canada's speed. It just that was my take on it, especially in this third game. Like the Soviets were very tactful in their approach dealing with Canada's. How can you go wrong with Canada's offense? With all the greats, with Gretz and with Lemieux, and we could just go down the list. The entire lineup was stacked.
Absolutely. I think it's the most talented Team Canada ever assembled, with obviously Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux leading the way. But also, I would say it was the most entertaining international hockey tournament ever. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch it because it took place a little over a year before I was born. But what memories do you have from that tournament in particular?
I just remember watching it, in the house there with my dad. You know, basically glued to the set. With end-to-end action. I was 8 years old at the time, and it just, like I said, seeing all that talent versus an unknown with the Soviets. Nobody knew how the Soviets were gonna, like at least for me at that point in time. I never knew anything about hockey outside of Canada, really, and
They
outside of
seemed
the
like such a
NHL.
well-oiled machine, didn't they?
That Victor Tikhonov was a professor, and it blew me away um how can I put it, how, like I said before, tactful, like with their approach, trying to stifle Canada's, overpowering offense, and just end to end action, man. Like I read there somewhere today online that game two, some people claim, is the best international hockey game ever played. I don't know about that, but you have to
I
go back to the 72 Summit Series, maybe. But
Yeah. I think in terms of cultural importance, the 1972 Summit Series will always be at the top for Canadian hockey. But I would still say the 1987 team was the best team they ever had, just top to bottom. Like, even without Gretzky and Messi, just go through the list of all the legends who were on that team, from Ray Bourque, Paul Coffey, Mark Messier,
yep.
Dale Howardchuk. Like, there was just tons of Hall of Famers. It's just a star-studded lineup, and like you said, the Soviets were very strong too. I mean, who are their other top players? Krutov, Makarov, uh,
Larionov,
Fetisov.
yeah,
They
like
were
the
just
green line, they dubbed there, like just uh and I forget the goaltender's name. Like he was spot on as well. Like just like I said before, with Victor Tikhonov at the helm of that team, you got to tip your hat to him. Like he knew what he was doing.
was it Mikanov, the goalie? Is that how you
It
say his
started
name?
with a P.
Okay.
I forget off the top of my head, but
I'm just going to pull
um,
up the stats right now. I'm pretty sure Gretzky led the tournament with 21 points, but I want to confirm that. Uh, yeah, he led the tournament with 18 assists and 21 goals, and then
yeah,
Lemieux had 18 assists, 21 points, and Lemieux had 11 goals, which led the tournament as well. So just
right.
unbelievable production between those two. It's almost a shame that they didn't get to be teammates in more international tournaments going forward after that.
Like even the Olympics, man. Could you imagine? Oh man.
Yeah. Well, see, that's another kind of special thing. Like 15 years later in 2002, you have Lemieux as the captain of Team Canada and Gretzky as the architect putting the team together. So that
Right.
I sort of felt like that was the next best tournament after the 87 Canada Cup.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I can remember watching that tournament as well. I'll never forget that gold medal game there. Um, there was a whole group of us there in Edmonton watching it at a friend's place, and like as with this Canada Cup, on the edge of our seats, just hoping to beat the Americans. And same thing in 2010, with Sidney Crosby in the golden goal, and
Mm-hmm.
just yeah, yeah. That's the reason why I love hockey, man. Like it brings, especially with the international game, it brings everybody together.
Oh, 100%. There's nothing that unites our country more than watching hockey. It's a huge part of our cultural identity. And even if you want to toss in another one to a slightly, maybe lesser extent, but Jordan Eberle's game tying goal against the Russians in the World Juniors in 2009. The only reason I say
Mhm.
lesser is because it was a semifinal game, but
Right.
still, that goal, I think everyone can still picture it in their head, and it was one of the biggest goals of the year. Eberle was something of a legend before he even played a game in Edmonton, just
Right.
based on his two World Junior performances. But just to tie back to the '87 Canada Cup, another thing I think that has to be mentioned, aside from you said Game Two might be the best game ever, with Lemieux getting a hat trick and Gretzky 5 assists.
Mhm.
Each game of that best of three final were all 6-5 scores.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that's insane in itself.
So there's obviously a lot of scoring going on at that era. And personally, I wish I could have been around to watch it because I think that was the most exciting end-to-end hockey that we'll ever see. And the systems are just so tight now. I don't think you'll ever really get to see that type of offense on a consistent basis again.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and that final goal here in Game Three to seal the deal there, Gretzky to Lemieux. That's picture perfect, man.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the most famous goals in hockey history, not even just Canadian hockey history. But before we get into some other topics, I want to find out a little more about you. How did you first get interested in hockey and become a fan of the Oilers?
I it's a little bit of a funny story there. My dad, he was a huge hockey fan, and when I was about 5 years old, my dad asked me. He said, "You want to try hockey?" And I was kind of scratching my head, and I was like, "Okay, well." I didn't really have a choice in the matter because he wanted me to play. So I said, "What the heck," And he had a pair of old skates, and it was kid skates, but they were from like the 1950s with the metal blades and
Oh
then the
wow.
metal holders. And all I remember from that, like the first time I went on the ice, I must have fell down 250 times, man. Like it was just insane. I got frustrated. I didn't want to play after that first, session there to learn how to skate. I got frustrated, and he just said, "You know what? Just stick with it. You'll as long as you get the hang of it. It's kind of like riding a bike, right? Like he was teaching me how to skate, like most parents teach their children how to ride a bike." And it was once I got the hang of getting the basics down and how to get my balance and getting my edge work in and the basic stuff. It kind of took off from there. And once I got the like I said, once I got the gist of it, the rest, like playing with the Atom teams there in Bagerville, um, it just I took off and I loved it. It grew in me automatically.
That's an awesome story. And was that around the same time you started watching hockey and following the Oilers a little bit?
Pretty much, like that was around the time when the Oilers dynasty was just kicking into gear with the 83-84 Cup run and win. And I couldn't st- I, you know I just I after seeing Gretzky play, that was it. That was I was a huge fan of his. Uh, right from the get-go, just anything he did on the ice, everybody in the room, had to stop and look what was going to happen next, let alone a 5-year-old or 6-year-old kid like myself.
So during that era, because you grew up pretty close to Edmonton, right in Vegreville. So did you have a chance to go into the city often, or see any games as a kid?
Yeah, my dad had tickets. He split season tickets there with my uncle and another one of his friends. So then that didn't happen until about 1987. I remember my first game. I think it was in November of '86. Um, it was a game versus. I'm not quite sure what the date. I mean, it could be '87. I may have my dates mixed up here, but I remember it was against the Minnesota North Stars, and there was like a bevy of goals there. I think the final score was 10-4 for Edmonton. And believe it or not, I do remember Kari Taco playing for the North Stars. He got injured, and Don Propre had to go back in for relief on him. And I think they scored 9 goals after that. I think it was about 1-2 or 1-0 after he got injured. It was in the first period, and yeah, just like I said, just even the pregame warm up for like the my first hockey game ever, seeing Gretzky, seeing Curry, seeing Messier in the warm up, and then you see Grant Fuhrer, just warming up along with him there. It was, my eyes were as big as saucers, man. I couldn't believe how awesome this was. Seeing my idols right in front of me live. And for people out there who haven't seen a game live yet, it's totally different from seeing it on the television. Like once you see a game live, that's where, like for me anyways, that's where I love the sport from there on in. You couldn't tell me it was a bad sport. I just loved it because the live action, and like I said, with that team, man oh man, like it was an awesome time to be there.
Well, Kirk, you got a pretty great memory. I'm pulling it up on Hockey Reference right now, and I think this is the game you're talking about. December 6th, 1987.
Yep.
The Oilers beat the Stars 10-4 at Northlands Coliseum.
Yep.
So I'm guessing that would be the one. And let's see. Wayne Gretzky finishes with 5 goals and an assist for 6
Right.
points.
Right.
Yari Curry had a goal and 5 points. Esa Tikkanen had 2 goals and 2 assists. And Steve Smith even with a goal and 2 assists. So that must have been quite the game to go see.
Yeah, like I said, man, it wasn't even I don't remember the particulars of the game other than, like I said, Kari Taco, because he was a future Oiler, and then just seeing the warm ups. That was where we were sitting was in the lower bowl on the Oilers side, so I got to see Grant Fuhrer play 2 periods,
Mm-hmm.
and but yeah, like just in the lower bowl area in the old Northlands Coliseum, like, and the fans there, like every time I just like the old barn, the sound, like as soon as everybody cheered, you felt like you're part of the team. I can't describe it. It's indescribable.
As someone who is a huge Oilers fan and idolizes all those guys from the 80s, I wish I could have been around for that. And that's such a cool story. I think those are the little stories that people love to hear, is just to find out about, what the experience was like in the building at that time. And my first Oilers game uh, wasn't as heroic as the one you attended, but about 20 years later, I can remember mine. It was April 1st, 2006, and it was the
Nice.
Oilers playing the Flames. It
Yep.
was late in the regular season, right before the Oilers went to the final, obviously, and I saw George Laraque win a fight against Chris Simon, I'm pretty sure. That
Right
was
on.
cool. And they lost 4-1 that night, unfortunately, but
Mhm.
still so cool to be there for my first time, and obviously the first of many times in that old barn. But I think the thing that I still remember about the warm ups for me anyway was that Ryan Smith always used to pick up 3 pucks
Yep.
before they skated off the ice, and he'd throw them to 3 kids in the stands. Now, obviously, I was like 17 years old. I wasn't going to be one of the kids running down to get them, and I was too high up anyway. But I thought that was just so cool that he still did that for the, little 6, 7, 8 year olds before every game. Just shows what a class guy he was, and yeah, that's just one of my great memories from that first trip to Northlands as well.
Yeah, man. And you just speaking on topic of the '06 Cup run. Um, I actually have a question for you. Did you manage to get to a playoff game?
I didn't. Yeah, I was still in grade 11 at the time, so I was I was right in finals for most of that playoff run when it was going on near the end, and I would have loved to come out there, but I didn't have a car and didn't have enough money to go do it, so it wouldn't have been in the cards for me at 17.
Right, right. And that's the one thing that I haven't experienced yet. And for all the years I've been a hockey fan, and I begged my parents in 1991. I'll never forget it. I think I think the Edmonton Oilers were playing against the Winnipeg Jets, and I begged my dad to go, and he just said, "Nope, it's a school night. You're gonna stay at home." Blah blah blah. Being the responsible parent, and not, it kind of broke my heart. But on the same token, um, that's one thing that I need to check off my bucket list, is to actually go to a playoff hockey game, let alone an Oilers one.
Was it that? Oh, 100%. Like I was hoping to go to see playoff games this spring. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. See, the other time that they were in the playoffs in 2017, I was in Toronto at that time in journalism school, so I didn't get to a chance to see it then either. But this was going to be my spring when I was finally going to get to see a playoff game. And even if we do get playoffs this summer, which I still believe we will, there's going to be no fans there, so I'm not going to have the opportunity this year as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a crazy time here right now. I don't know what your take is on the current situation, but um, for me, I'm just jonesing for anything right now, man. If there's no fans, you know what? Throw up your arms in the air. So be it. It just I me personally, when it comes to this situation, it's a very unique situation. I would like to see the players' safety be number one on the list, and when it's, I like I said, I'd love to see playoff hockey, and it will definitely be interesting what they do finalize on a decision with what they're going to do. But yeah, it's a little bit of a heartbreaker, because I thought the Oilers were doing really, really good right up until that last game versus Winnipeg.
And even then they weren't out of it. It was just one bad turnover that led to a breakaway goal, but they earned playoffs this year. And I think that's going to be one of the things that I'll be most ticked off about if the playoffs don't resume somehow this year, because that team battled from the start of the year. They were in first place for 58 consecutive days. They're second place in the division as of right now.
Right.
And to throw a season like that away where we don't even get to see how far McDavid and Draisaitl could have pulled this team, that'll be disappointing to me, because I'm not saying they were guaranteed to win a round, but I,
Right.
I'll take their chances against Calgary or Vancouver. And if they go by points percentage, we'd be playing Vancouver right now. I know everyone wants to see that Battle of Alberta, but I think there's going to be, I think as exciting as that would be, there's a better chance someone gets hurt in that series. So I would rather play Vancouver. And yeah, it would be really disappointing if they don't get to resume some way. But let's hope that in July they'll be back. I know Jim Matheson was tweeting earlier that he thinks September might even be an option for them to come back. But then you're really pushing next season into the summer as well. So if that's what they have to do, that's what they have to do. But it's gonna leave all of us fans just waiting on the edge of our seat for hockey to come back.
Absolutely, man. Like, and seeing all these old games on the TV, like I noticed, like there's even guys doing like Tyler Campbell there. I think the last episode that you did with him, he was doing redrafts of like the 90, 91 or 92 seasons, I think it was, or 93.
Yeah,
And it's nice. It's kind of, it's a novelty. I like it to a certain degree, but it doesn't replace what we have right now. And like you said, it would be a darn shame if this season didn't pan out. And just to see where, like as you said, Connor and Leon, and where they landed, how far they went in the postseason.
for sure. And before we even go a little further into Oiler conversation, I wanted to ask you a few more things about growing up as an Oiler fan. Did you have one or two favorite players, whether or not they're with the Oilers or around the league?
Well, actually, after that's another funny story, and kind of tragic in a way. Like after the own goal by Steve Smith in the '86 playoffs versus Calgary, um, and once again, my dad and I are watching the game. You could hear a pin drop in the room, and it was over. Like, and you just you're stunned, and from there on in, I wasn't really keen on watching the playoffs here and there, but you had to still look here, and still kind of keep an eye on it. And I remember watching a Calgary and Montreal final game at my uncle's place, and seeing Patrick Waugh do the things that he did as a 20-year-old rookie. Like literally, and a lot of people say, looking back in retrospect, that Montreal team shouldn't have had any business being in that final. He literally carried them to that final and pushed them over the edge and got them that championship. And just seeing what he did as a 20-year-old, like he was a skinny kid, and I'll remember it. Like he would challenge guys. He would literally charge out of his net, and you could see the old tapes are on YouTube. Like he was standing like 25 feet, like almost out to the hash marks, man. Like challenging shooters. That's how cocky of a goaltender, like a rookie goaltender, just challenging shooters. That sticks out in my mind. And just from there, my interest, of the game shifted to goaltending from there. And seeing that series, what he did, actually, and even Mike Vernon, if you want to, flip the script there, that Calgary team was a stingy team, and they stuck around here and there, but it wasn't like the 89 Cup team, but in the 89 series. But just seeing Patrick Waugh doing that, just doing his thing right from the get-go as a rookie, and that stood out for me. And from there on in, my attention was focused on goaltending, and I liked Grant Fuhr as a goalie, but for me personally, it was Bill Ranford that I really tried to emulate when I played the game. I tried to, do the double pack, the double stack pad saves, and in practice, you wouldn't be caught dead doing it during a game there, because I'd probably be yanked. But just his mannerisms in the net, just getting set and square to the shooter, and just seeing those regular seasons games there were afterwards, like in 1990, the same thing. And my eyes were as big as saucers just seeing him live. And those were the two goaltenders that really opened up my eyes to the game from that perspective. And you kind of, it's kind of weird, as a goalie, you have to be a little bit crazy, to have a
Everyone always says that, right? That all goalies are kind of different animals.
In one of my articles, I'm a musician, part-time musician as well. And
Okay.
I kind of dubbed the goalies as the drummers.
I was just going to say that. Aren't they kind of the weird ones in the band too?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And just to have a rubberized, disc being shot at you, and like as a kid, I can remember in practices, especially the guys that had the wicked slap shots, they would try to aim for my head and literally rattle like millions of pucks off my cage there, off my helmet, and I would laugh, just like this is freaking awesome, just and it just from there on in, like and like I said, it was my start of love for the game from that perspective as when it comes to goaltending.
Well, that's an awesome story. Are you also the drummer?
No,
You're not. Okay.
I as a kid, in high school, um, we had a garage band there, me and my friends,
Hmm.
and there was no drummer, so I just kind of said, I'll step up to the plate and I'll be the drummer, and I wasn't very good. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't very good, but once again, uh, that introduced me to my love of music. Trying to trying to figure out, like different drum patterns, that kind of stuff. And then one day I decided to grab a guitar, just kind of canoodle on the guitar, and there, the same thing with the guitar. And then the bass came along, and same thing with the bass, man. I just kind of stuck with it, just like I did with hockey there. But unfortunately, when I started playing rep hockey, it got pretty competitive to the point where I didn't like my coach. I'm not going to lie, I didn't
Hmm.
like the guy, and it kind of killed the fun out of it. So, and I'll never forget my parents after a hockey tournament there in Lloydminster. It was against the Blazers rep team. We were in the A
Okay.
final, and I'll never forget. We lost the game. I was in net, and after the game, my mom and dad sat me down and literally, handed me the decision of uh, whether I wanted to continue or not. And all I remember is the coach yelling at me. And I just, after that, it kind of soured me on it, to tell you the truth. And I just turned to my dad and I said, you know what? I said, maybe this isn't for me, especially with the competitive side. And I was 12 years old. I didn't know. It was looking back on it, it was my first quote unquote adult decision. And I, looking back on it, yeah, sure, there's a few regrets here and there, but
Yeah.
um, I'll never forget my dad saying to me, I think I was about 15. He said, "Yeah," he said, "There's NHL scouts checking you out already." I'm just like, oh man, like that right there. I was like, no, maybe I should turn back. But at that point, it was kind of too late with my
Yeah.
developmental end of things. So
Exactly. I mean, it's that's a it's a tough position. You're either the hero or you're the goat, right? Like it's
pretty
just,
much, yeah,
you
much.
somewhat, if, I can only imagine. I never played goal in my whole life. I put on the pads for one practice, I think when I was about 9. So that was the beginning and end of my goaltending career. But and I was always a forward and thought it was the most fun position to play, and probably was. But yeah, that's a tough break. But at least you had, well, what, 5 6 year minor hockey career.
Yeah, you betcha. I started there when I was 6, and yeah, and then I ended there when I was 12. So, um, and I'll never forget there in the end. The C team guys were asking me if I would want to come back, and I just, at that juncture, like I said, I was pretty soured on the whole
Yeah,
situation there.
you had other interests. You were doing music. You were doing other things, so it makes sense. Um, so yeah, it's been almost 2 months since the Oilers played their last game, but there's a little bit of news to talk about. Uh, the Oilers recently signed Gaetan Haas to a 1 year deal, as well as
Mhm.
prospects Philip Berglund and Marcus Niemelainen, and a Swedish free agent, Theodor Lennstrom. First off, what do you think of Haas's play this season, and do you like that they're bringing him back for another year?
Well, you know what, man, I was skeptical on this on the first couple games, and I have to take a step back, and you kind of have to say to yourself, well, the guy has never played an NHL, NHL game. Um, And over the course of the first 2 months, you could see his progression, with just the little things, especially on the defensive side of the puck. Like he was just awesome. I thought anyways, just trying to at least make an effort and trying to just, go, go get the puck type of deal. And then I think he got more comfortable with Tippett's systems, and just kind of bloomed from there. And for a depth signing, I thought it was awesome, and for the price is right at $915,000. So it's not a massive cap hit as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really didn't know what they were getting in the player when they signed him last year out of the Swiss league, but he stepped in and played all right in a depth role. And I think if nothing else, he gives them a little bit of insurance at center in case someone gets hurt. I
Mhm.
don't know if he's necessarily a lock to be one of the top three centers next year. I think ideally you'd like to have a better third line center so he could sort of be in a fourth line center role. But then again, you've got Riley Shahan,
Mhm.
and maybe those two guys are competing for that fourth line center spot, and that added competition will really bring a lot out of them, especially at least until someone like Ryan McLeod has another couple of years in the minors, or at least another year, I would say, to sort of develop into that third line center guy that they're hoping he's going to be.
Right. Yeah, I read somewhere today that Sheehan's camp and the Oilers are talking contracts, and rumor was it was about 2.5 per. So I don't know if Ken Holland's too crazy about that, but like I said, it's probably just a rumor, but at this juncture, but
Yeah,
you never know.
that's probably more than I'd like to pay for my fourth line center.
Hmm.
But I mean, he came into camp on a $900,000 1 year deal in last September because he couldn't find a deal all summer. So to sort of jump from 900,000 to 2.5 million, that's going to be tough for the Oilers to fit under the cap, I think, especially with other guys they have to get signed. So
Right.
I would like to bring him back. I thought that he looked good with Josh Archibald at times last
Hmm.
year too. So I
Absolutely.
don't mind having that pairing together. It's just it's going to come down to the cost, I think.
Yeah, and then you have to start to wonder if you'd have to look elsewhere for that third line slash fourth line center to sub in to replace him. Um, but I thought he had struggles too this year. He had bad streaks, but I think that goes for any player on any team. You're going to have your peaks and you're going to have your valleys.
Definitely. And do you have a thought on Niemelainen and Berglund?
I don't know them quite well.
Okay.
I tried looking up for a video on today on YouTube there to see if there was any I could do a little scouting here before tonight, and I found old video of Nima Linen uh, in the World Junior, and I might be the U18s actually, but I'm not sure. But the kid is big. Like
Yeah.
he is six. Like for as far as Marcus Niemelainen goes, he's 6'6". But the knock on him, he was nothing special. And probably I would say it would be a project for Dave Manson in Bakersfield. Um, as far as Berglund goes, uh, I think he played with Philip Broberg this year. It says here that he was with Skellefteå in the SHL. Um, 6'3", 210 pounds, and right shot D. Um, from what I read off of Dobber Prospects, he has a great shot from the line, from the blue line, and just uh, just a stay-at-home type of defenseman, especially if you want a quarterback on a power play as well with that coveted right shot D. So, but other than that, I really couldn't find anything. With Lindstrom as well, I thought, you know, I seen the fan reaction on Twitter when he got signed by Edmonton. and a lot of Swedish people, like a lot of Swedish fans, popped up and said, you guys got a heck of a player. And I was just like kind of scratching my head. I'm like, okay, never heard of the kid before, but decided to take a look up and found a little bit of tape on him, and he's got a quick shot. He jumps up in the plays. It's kind of like I would say he'd be a nice compliment to Evan Bouchard, maybe. I'm not sure. Quick feet. So who knows with Theodore Lindstrom there too? But as I said there before, the Swedish fans from Frölunda say you're going to get a heck of a player. So see how far that goes, I guess.
Definitely. And when you talked about Niemelainen, I mean he is huge for sure. And I was encouraged when the Oilers took him, I think with their third round pick in 2017, because he's got that big frame and he had a pretty decent rookie year in the OHL, but his draft plus one season he really dropped off in terms of point production, and it seemed like all that goodwill that he'd built up in his draft year kind of disappeared. And then he
Mhm.
didn't stick with the Canadian junior system. He went back to Sweden, or sorry, went back to Finland, I should say, and
Mhm.
played in the pro league over there for a couple of years. I
Yep.
think he's bounced around to a couple teams here too. If I pull up his stats, yeah, he's been with HPK and Asset, so he's played with a couple teams, and the numbers don't really jump off the page at you either. He's
Mhm.
averaging like 5 to 7 points a year in
Right.
about 50 odd games, but I think he skates fairly well for a big guy. I don't know if he has an NHL future or not. He might just be a good depth guy who helps support the prospects in the system.
Mhm.
But the Oilers had to, try and get him over here and see what they have in him. I know Scott Housen was talking pretty well about him on Bob Stauffer's show a couple months ago. So I think he believed there was a player there, and I guess we'll see this fall. As for Philip Berglund, that's another guy who's a bit of an older prospect now, age 23,
Uh-huh.
and his numbers are a little better. Like he had 20 points in 52 games in the
Right.
SHL this year. So that's a little more impressive to see. And another thing that's worth note is that he was actually defensive partners with the Oilers' first round pick last year, also named Philip Broberg.
Right.
So I was kind of wondering if they were going to bring both of them over, because I thought that'd be a bit of an easier transition. You bring over two guys who are friends, they know each other, then they're coming into this not only new city but new country,
Right.
and I think it would just kind of ease the transition to playing in the AHL. But the organization ultimately chose to keep Broberg in Sweden for another year, and I think that'll be a good decision too. Keep in mind he's eligible to play in the World Juniors again next year, and I
Mhm.
expect at age 19 that he will really take off, and that he'll have a great tournament. But back to Berglund, this is a guy who I think is going to get a decent amount of playing time in the AHL next year, because you look at guys like Bear, Bouchard, Jones, who will all have made the jump, I believe, full time next year with the Oilers. There's going to be spots open, and Niemelainen and Berglund will be two of those guys. And I think Lindstrom will also sort of fit into that slot.
Mhm.
He might come up and play some NHL games. I see him more in the mold of a Joel Pearson type player. We
Right.
sort of, Pearson put up huge numbers in the SHL playing with Elias Pettersson of the Canucks when they were over there. And you realize how tough it is when you come over here, especially as I think he was 25 when he arrived in Edmonton. So
Right.
uh, that's the same age Lindstrom is now. We'll see what he's able to do, but I wouldn't bank on him to play NHL games this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if injuries come up and he gets in.
Yeah. Like I said, I seen the tape on Lindstrom, and I was actually, kind of surprised, and pleasantly surprised. I mean, by what he could do. And yeah, like you never know, man. Like I don't know. As far as like the RFA signings go, if you want to lean back on what they're going to do with Bear, and if they're going to bridge him or give him a long-term contract.
I would sign
And
him to an 8-year deal. I would
yeah,
absolutely lock him up to the max. And even if it cost him $4 million, I think that will be a huge bargain down the road because you could probably get him for about 2.5 million on a short-term deal now.
mhm.
But I'm fairly certain his agent is going to want to bring that number up if we're going long term because he turns 23 this year, I believe. I can't remember if he's had his birthday or not already. I thought he was a June birthday, but let me just check that.
Just looking him up
I
here
know,
too. Oh,
yeah, he is. He's born in June '97, so he does turn 23 this year. So if you're locking him up for 8 years, that's taking him to 31. So basically, you're locking up prime years and a bunch of UFA years too. So I can see the agent wanting that number to come up. But honestly, even if it did cost 4 million, and it might even cost more than that, I might actually be selling him short there.
mhm.
I would still be interested in doing that deal because those those are big years to lock up on a player who I think is going to be an important piece for the Oilers going forward.
Absolutely. Like Bear, I knew leaning back on his draft year, like seeing little snippets of his play there with Seattle, I knew the kid was special. Like I had that feeling that he could do things that the Edmonton Oilers were looking for especially in a right shot defenseman, and not even just have him as a stay home type of guy, but also work the power play. Um, with him and Evan Bouchard as a 1-2 punch on that power play, boy oh boy, like the future is very very bright for the Edmonton Oilers and their defense.
Oh, they are so deep on the back end right now. I think they need to address their forward depth through the draft a little bit this year. I would fully expect them to take a forward in the first couple rounds at least to sort of build that up because there aren't a lot of high end forward prospects on the farm right now. I think there's a couple who might be coming. Like you're going to get why is his name escaping me right now? The second round pick from last year, Raphael Lavoie.
Yes.
I think he has the potential to be at least a top six forward. I would hope. I think he could be a second line guy who
Hmm.
can score 20 to 25 goals a year. He's got a deadly shot. He's a volume shooter, and maybe a guy like Maximov comes along. But other than that, Tyler Benson is probably the next best guy, and I expect him to be on the Oilers as well. So now you're really depleting that forward lineup already in Bakersfield. It could be another rebuilding year for them next year.
Right.
So we'll see what goes on there. Um, but definitely, you look at the back end. There's no doubt that's the strength of the system, as well as I think they have some pretty decent goaltenders, and I think that's a good chance for us to transition to that now. I'd like to get a thought from you on each of the Oilers' four goaltending prospects: Dylan Wells, Stuart Skinner, Olivier Rodrigue, and Konovalov over in Russia.
Right. And just kind of hitting the rewind button here to last year, like Shane Sturette there, I think he just had a bad season overall. With he was hampered with injuries. I forget what he like. I think he had a hamstring problem there, and with the Oilers signed him to that 1 year deal, the show me what you got type of contract. He had the opportunity to really kind of come into his own there, and just with them injuries, it was just a bad string of luck as far as um, what I seen there.
I think he's a really good minor league goalie too. I mean, he had a fantastic year in 2018-19
Mhm.
when the Bakersfield finished near the top of the conference. But don't you think it's time that I don't want to cut you off or anything, but I think it's time for them to sort of give the younger guys those minutes that they need, and they need those starts.
Right. Yeah. No. Especially, and I was just going to go into Stuart Skinner's play there from last year. It was wildly inconsistent as well, but for his first full or I think he was a second year pro in Skinner, and I I thought they it's kind of a raw deal there for Dylan Wells because I think with drafting Konovalov kind of put him on the hot seat kind of sorta, but maybe I'm going too far ahead of myself here, but I think with Stewart there, like with Skinner there, he's most likely being groomed as the next goaltender to kind of break through there. At least that's the feeling that I get with him playing so much here in this last year. Like, and his number, like I said, his play was up and down. And previous, like the last, like the last year's playoffs there for Bakersfield, he kind of bailed out Starrett and kind of, being under pressure. I think as a goaltender, he kind of thrives on that pressure. Just being in the moment type of deal. Because you look back on his junior years, getting traded from Lethbridge there to Swift Current, he kind of put him on put him in that spotlight, and I think he kind of thrived in it. So, and as far as I can see with Stuart Skinner, like he's a good size, like at 6'4", and 205 pounds. Like he has the frame that most organizations in the National Hockey League kind of covet, that between 6'2" and 6'4", that the bigger type of goalie. And he has excellent athleticism. His lateral movement is awesome. He has to, kind of, pay his dues, kind of do his time there, and trying to, fine tweak his game, like just work out the kinks, so to speak, there, and then wait for the call, basically, And as far as Dylan Wells goes, he had a really rough year. Like I did see some tape earlier in the year, even with Wichita in the ECHL. I think his confidence kind of was shot, and that's my take on it, because I seen, comparing to his first year playing in Bakersfield and then to this year, it was two separate goalies. Like, just, he has all the tools in the toolbox, and I don't know if, like, he's having just like I said, just a bad year overall, like mindset wise, or maybe the pre-scout on him, they kind of figured out what his kinks in his game are, and they're exposing him. But I think next year is his last year of his entry level deal, and he's got to kind of, like I said, with Start there, he's got to show me what you got type of deal. In that kind of situation, it's kind of a make it or break it for him. He had a wonderful junior career. He played on the Peterborough Petes there, and on his draft year, he played exceptionally well. And I thought, I thought the draft pick was pretty good, just on what he could do. But he just confidence, man. Like, especially nowadays with goaltenders. If you have any doubts in your game, boy, oh boy, it could just be an avalanche that'll come down on you, and it's a long time to dig out of it.
No, I appreciate the analysis. That's great to kind of look back over the last 4 drafts where the Oilers have taken a goalie in each of them. I'd like to get your thought. What was your initial reaction when the Oilers picked a triple overage goaltender last year out of Russia?
Yeah, that was a head scratcher too. Like, I thought, I never knew anything about the kid. Like Ilya Konovalov was, like, as you said, a triple overager, passed over 3 times. I had to do some research on him, and I actually saw some old game footage from the year before last, and I could see why they selected him. Like, he doesn't have a big frame. He's only 5'11", but he's well built for his height. Like, he just and you could see the post draft interview there with Bob Green. Like, there was a lot of doubts, and a lot of people were asking why. And Bob Green just literally laid it out on the table. Like, we like what he's seen from the kid and what he can do. And looking at that footage, and scouting the kid, like, he's going to be a project, because playing on KHL sized ice, like on that international sized rink, and coming over to North America with a smaller sized rink, there's going to be some growing pains. I could see it from a mile away. And he had a fantastic first year. His rookie season in the KHL, he was lights out. I think at one point he had 10
Under,
shutouts.
yeah, under two, averaged under 2 goals a game, and I believe I looked up a stat a while ago that he had 14 shutouts in a span of 70 games over the
There you
two
go.
years.
Yeah.
But yes, 10 as a rookie. I was the KHL Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this, goaltending a lot better than me, so I appreciate your analysis here. But to me, it looks like a guy who has potential. It's just a matter of, like you said, can he adjust to the North American game? But do you think that because he's a bit of an older prospect, he's a little closer to maybe playing NHL games than some younger guys who would have been picked?
Yeah, well, and I just read there recently that the KHL is actually trimming the size of their rinks, I think by 6 feet width. So it
Yeah, I
is
think I saw
they're
that on Twitter.
yeah they're kind of trimming the fat there on the size of the rinks, and that'll be interesting in itself. How not only for Ilya, but just for goalies in general over there,
Adjusting.
because well, you have all that time and space to get in a set position. And like I said, with the North American sized ice, like you see it with Russian goaltenders. I'll, for example, like Ilya Samsonov of Washington Capitals. For him, it took him a year and a half to adjust from the KHL to the minors, and then now he's poised to take over in Washington as their future franchise goalie. Kind of a side note with Samsonov, everybody was screaming back in the 2015 draft at Peter Chiarelli for for dealing them 2 picks for
Yeah.
Griffin Reinhardt. I was sour because I wanted Ilya
Oh,
Samsonov. Like
really?
there's our future goaltender right staring in our face. And
See, he
now
wouldn't have been the guy I would have picked, but that's interesting. I mean, looking back now, it might have been a good pick. I still think they should have gone with a Besser or a Barzell, but no, that's obviously, if you can get a franchise goalie, that's huge.
well, and Samsonov, I know it's a little off topic, not being Oilers, but I found that Samsonov, especially this year, he's coming and he's literally coming to his own, and kind of shoved Braden Holtley aside as the number one guy. But and just but going back, like you're gonna have, like I said, that growing pain from switching from that bigger ice surface to the smaller ice surface. You've seen it last year, even with Koskinen. Like he had that trouble with that time and space in order to get to that set square position for the shooters, and everybody was screaming, "Oh, he's got a bad glove." Nope, it wasn't his glove; it was his footwork. And if you're not square to that shooter, you're going to be chasing the puck. And basically, he was chasing the puck a lot. So, and that was one of the things that he worked over the summer. Like he was just getting quicker footwork. And it's a big problem for European and for Russian goalies. Like dealing with that smaller size surface, you have to be quicker.
Definitely, and I think some people were concerned about the contract that Koskinen signed a little over a year ago. But if you think about it, like you said, after that rough showing in training camp, I believe he won his first 3 starts with the Oilers and was something like 12-6 or 12-7
Mm-hmm.
and with a overtime loss in there in his first 20 games with the Oilers. So there's a we saw there was a player there, and this year, even though you could still argue he's maybe a little overpaid,
Mm-hmm.
I thought he gave the Oilers fantastic goaltending during good portions of the season, and it kind of ties into what I want to go to next. But before I ask you a question about the current goaltending, I want to get you to make a prediction. I'll put you on the spot here. We'll say let's say it's the 2023-24 season, so 3 years down the line from right now. Obviously, we can't predict who the Oilers would sign or bring in, but just looking at the goaltenders who were just in the system, in possession of the Oilers, who would you say will be the two goaltenders on opening night for the Oilers 3 years from now?
Wow. That's a heavy question, man. And I'll shout it from the mountaintops. Goalies are they're wild cards. They're pure voodoo. You don't know
Oh yeah,
what
it's the
you're going to
hardest to
get.
predict, probably, right? And I think that's another reason why you see people saying don't draft a goalie in the first round. Yet there's that Askarov kid who might
Mhm.
go top 10. I mean, obviously the Oilers drafted a Hall of Fame goalie in Grant Fuhr in the top 10 as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's I just wanted to give you a tough one, put you on the spot, and hold you to it. Just but if you had to just make an educated guess, who would you say that the two goalies would be? Say 3 years from now.
Uh, Off the top of my head, and I hope this happens. I hope Olivier Rodrigue kind of comes into his own, especially with his first pro year coming up. Um, and honestly, I would love to see the Russian kid, Ilya Konovalov. Ilya reminds me of a poor man's Carey Price. Just the way that
Wow.
his demeanor on the ice, with his it's just a smaller version of Carey Price. For some odd reason, I have a gut feeling, and I probably will be wrong. But like I said, with goalies, it could be anybody. You're literally, man. But and I'm not knocking Skinner either. I think Stuart Skinner could be a full-time NHL goalie, but I and same thing with Rodrigue. Like he had another stellar year in junior. I think his record. Hang on a sec here. I just had his record kicking around here. He was 31-7-1 with a 2.32 goals against average and a 918 save percentage with the Moncton Wildcats. Um,
And his game really took off after the World Juniors, right?
yeah, like in that was the other real kicker, that he never got a taste of action here this year in the World Juniors. It was Nico Dawes and oh god, I can't remember the other guy's name, um, but yeah, like and people are knocking nepotism, because Sylvain, his father, works as a
Right.
goalie coach for Bakersfield. I The biggest knock for me for Rodrigue right now is his size. He has to gain weight
He's
because
slight. He's very slight. I
yeah,
actually joked about it with Tyler on the last podcast that we have a similar build. We're both about 6'1", 170 pounds. So
yeah,
that's yeah, he could stand to put on a few pounds for sure. But then there's those guys like Ryan Miller, who is kind of like a rail too, right? But
yep.
he, looks huge in the net. With all that padding adds a few pounds to you, I guess. So the next topic I wanted to go into with is the Oilers' current goaltending situation. I wanted to get a thought from you on Koskinen and uh, Smith this year, and just what your analysis is of both of them during the 2019-2020 season, and who should be the starter for the playoffs.
Yeah, that's I actually, a lot of people were cringing when Holland signed Smith, and I'll never forget it. Catherine Silverman, she works for the Athletic there in Arizona, seen him for years, and I'll never forget. She tweeted, she goes, "Oilers fans will either love him or hate him because of his wild, inconsistent play. Like when he's on, he's he's unstoppable." Like she said, and you see it last year with him in Calgary. Like he was bar none their best player. Like he literally held them in well, it wasn't much of a series, but he stood on his head, like trying to keep the entire team in that series. And unfortunately, it didn't happen for him. But I a lot of people were skeptical on the Smith signing, and I thought, you know what, it's a gamble. Tippett knows him from, like I said, from his days there in Arizona. Um, and he kind of leaned on him pretty hard there in shots, and like there was at points where I wanted to throw a beer through my television just with the terrible play that he was doing there. But uh, I you know what, like if going into the playoffs, you could pick either or, man. Like, and for me, it would be Smith because once again, like you thrive in that pressure environment. You want a guy that can kind of just brush it off type of deal. And when Mike Smith is in that zone, boy oh boy, anything can happen. Like he can steal a game for you, or he could steal 3 games for you for all what we've seen there in his past there, even with Arizona.
Definitely. And I think he also had maybe not just the Oilers goaltending moment of the season, but the goaltending moment for the entire NHL this year. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I'm trying to remember here because there's a few of them there
It
that
had
I would.
it had nothing to do with actually playing goalie. It was the fight against
Oh,
Cam
right.
Talbot in
Yeah,
January.
yeah.
Uh, what were you thinking when you were watching that?
I love it. I think as a whole, like that game in itself, I knew it was a powder keg to go off. Um, and but seeing him kind of coast up to the center ice there, like to the center line there, and then him perched on his goalie stick, um, I, and then kind of tipped the hat there to Cam, like he's for stepping up. Everybody else is fighting, we might as well go type of deal. And I
Oh,
love a good goalie
it was
fight.
awesome. And you know what? I still like Cam Talbot too. He was a great guy. Obviously, when you're playing for the Flames, you're not our friend that night.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll always appreciate what he did for the Oilers when he was here and getting them to the playoffs and the great season he had, breaking Grant Fuhr's single season wins record, getting a shutout in the Heritage Classic, which I was lucky enough to go to in Winnipeg. Just all those things. But yeah, that fight. I mean, he really got beat down by Smith, and I think he knew that he was going up against a fiery competitor who was just waiting, just chomping at the bit to get to square up with somebody, and he got his opportunity and made the most of it. But man, that was probably the most exciting battle of Alberta I've seen in a long time. Maybe the most exciting game in the entire NHL this season. Um, but do you, as a goalie, do you get the? I mean, as a former goalie, I should say, do you get the hype over goalie fights, or do you think that everyone else just hypes it up too much?
No, well, I don't know. Everybody has their own opinion on it, and for me personally, it's part of that competitive spirit. You could go back to like for example with Patrick Waugh, and those series against Detroit. Like same thing. Like I think he had a goalie fight in that, and that's the thing that just sticks out for me. Like if you're in the trenches with your teammates, it doesn't matter who you are. If you wanted to fight, you're going to fight. Like it I don't get like the negativity towards goalie fights. Like it's part of the game. Um, I I love it because they're players on the team too. I imagine what you're in the moment. You're in that moment, and you're gonna. So I'm gonna stick up for my guys, and more ways than one. I'm stopping a puck, and then, like I said before, goaltenders are kind of crazy. They're kind of loopy, and they generally fight pretty damn good. So
Oh, for sure. And I think it also depends on the situation too. I mean, if it's a heated battle of Alberta like that, or a playoff series between two rivals like the Red Wings and the Avalanche in the late '90s, that just adds so much more to it. And I remember watching that on TV, and that was just such a. I mean, there were fights before that too. Ethan Bear fought Matt Kachuk.
mhm.
Um, Sam Gagne landed a few good shots on Mark Giordano,
Yep.
and Bob Stauffer pointed out that was like 7 years in the making, because I guess Giordano had given him a face wash when he was wearing the full cage back in 2013 after taking a cross. Remember when Cassian hit him in the jaw with the stick?
Right. Right.
and,
Yeah. I
and
remember.
Giordano, and there's kind of like a respect among players, like a player with a cage on for an injury, you don't
Right.
mess with their face, and he still pushed at him. So I'm glad to see Gagne got some revenge there, and man, I hope that guy comes back in some capacity with the Oilers next season too. But I won't go down that road right now. But I love Sammy. But yeah, that series, I mean that game against the Battle of Alberta makes you think of how exciting a playoff series would be between those two teams. And yeah, Smith with the few bombs. Did you ever get a chance to hear Jack Michael's call of it? The Oilers tweeted it out because I was watching the television version, obviously, so I heard. Um, I can't remember who called it that night. I think Dave Randorf was calling it,
Yeah.
but the Jack Michaels call, like this guy could call boxing. That he, his honestly, the way that he breaks down a fight just off the top of his head with no notes prepared. I mean, that guy, he's a phenomenal announcer too.
He's beautiful off the cuff, like, and even with the goal calls too. Like, I'll never forget the Archibald goal in Carolina in overtime. I think it was in overtime, was it, or
Yeah,
was it?
that's a fantastic goal call too.
Yeah, like he paints a beautiful picture there. And for my job, I work on the road a lot, so I can't see the games,
Okay.
but I definitely tune in because, and I going back in retrospect, being a longtime fan of Rod Phillips, and then
Oh,
hearing Jack call games, he's definitely come into his own and definitely endeared a lot of fans, and just the way that he calls games. But boy, like you hit it right on the head there with calling. He could call boxing matches no problem. Like,
for
and
sure.
he's very
And
descriptive.
And I know every game wasn't on TV back in the 80s, so I'm guessing that there were a lot of games that you guys listened to on the radio with Rod Phillips, if unless ITV
Mm,
was showing it, right? And I mean,
absolutely.
Rod Phillips is a legend. He's a hockey Hall of Famer. But as much as you say no one will be Rod Phillips, Jack Michaels picked up the torch and carried it very well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like he and Bob, they work well with each other. And yeah, like Jack tries to be as descriptive as possible, and yeah, you got to tip your hat to him for that.
For sure. And a couple more things I want to get to before I let you go. But just as for the playoffs here, what's your gut tell you for who's starting game one whenever it is?
Oh, I think Tip's going to go with Smith. Like,
Yeah.
it's
That's
and well, and it's nice to have that
Is it the
tandem.
experience? Like you think it's? I know they can go back and forth, but is it just because he has the previous relationship with Smith, or is it the fact that he's got more experience in the playoffs?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, he's been to the conference finals with Arizona as in the past there in 2012, and I think when it comes down to the wire, especially kicking off a series, whether it be albeit against Calgary or Vancouver, um, you have to go with experience, and not knocking Koskinen either. I think Koski would be an awesome starter there too. Like, they've shown, like, and Dave Tippett really hit the nail on the head, like, with being in tandem, it kind of relieves the pressure off of both guys, especially with Koskin in there, because I think that towards the end of last year there he was just burnt out. Like, he just
They
was
played
just
him
driven
twice on
into
the
the
stretch.
ground.
Yeah, I think they have to monitor his minutes a little more. And I think that's why having Smith there this year really helped him. And the two of them were able to work well together. In the extra rested time, you saw Koskinen come back sharp, and he was just looked way better in the net. So,
Mhm.
with they've got him for another 2 years, and hopefully he can continue to play at that level. However, Smith will be a free agent after this year.
Mhm.
I wanted to get your thought on, do you think they should bring him back, as well as we can kind of tie this in to some of the RFA goalies around the league? We mentioned Braden Holtby earlier in the podcast. Would he be a guy you'd be interested in for the Oilers, or is there another guy around the league that you think that they should potentially bring in to replace Smith?
I'm on the fence just because with Smith, just because of his age. like he's just one hamstring pull away from being shelved. I love that he's a competitor. I love that he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's not afraid to tell guys, hey, come on, step it up type of deal. But you take a look at this year's crop of even UFAs, like I said with Brayton Holtby, it would be a tough sell to get him here just because of the money and the cap implications with it. Um, I think in order for Braden Holtby to be an Edmonton Oiler, they'd have to ship out Koskinen or ship out some money in another fashion just to
The
make room
hometown
for
connection would be interesting, though. He is from Lloydminster,
him.
and when I was interning there, I actually met his sister, who's a veterinarian there, and really nice lady. And it just obviously Braden's a fantastic goaltender, and I think if there was any interest in playing a little closer to home, Edmonton's as close as it can be. So maybe that ends up happening. He also played for the Saskatoon Blades, who I had a chance to watch him during his junior career, and I'd love to see him come back too.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I would say he would be an out like a long shot at this point, but like with Ken Holland and the magic that he can pull off there in some deals, you never know. So, but I I kind of lean like I seen the other day on Twitter there Shane Sander. I think he had on the podcast here a little while ago.
Yeah, I think I had him back in February. He's a buddy of mine. We used to
Yeah,
write together, hockey writers as well.
yeah, he kind of dropped the line there in a poll and saying who would you like to see as the number two or the 1A or 1B goalie for next year. He had Mike Smith, and I think he had Thomas Grice as the other option, and the other or sorry as the second option, and the third option he mentioned Chris Drieger of Florida. Now, with Chris Drieger, and I kind of replied back to him. I said, out of all the goalies that are lined up in that poll, I'm kind of in minority. And I said I'd take Drieger if the option was there because he's an AHL journeyman. Um, he's been through it all. Drafted by Ottawa. I think he was 74th overall there, and I think it was 2014. I can't remember the exact year of his draft year, but um, he came in this year when Bobrovsky was kind
Well,
of floundering.
just looked him up. He's a 94 born, so he would have been a 2012 draft pick.
Okay, there you go. Um, but he came in and kind of relieved Bobrovsky when he was floundering this year, and did an awesome job. Like he went 7-2-1, 2.05 goals against average, and a 938 save percentage. You can't get much better than that. And checking out the video on him there, did a little pre-scout here on him, and he would be a perfect fit with Koskinen because that him and Koski tandem doing a tandem like splitting it like half and half, I think would be invaluable. But that's my opinion. The other two goalies I had an eye on, SPR actually, they're kind of threw this out here a little earlier in the year and kind of mentioned it there with Michael McNiven of he's in the Montreal Canadiens system there right now. He's kind of been a knockaround guy too. Like he got demoted to the ECHL several times, and without remorse or nothing, he just kind of continued, marching to the beat of his own drum. There's actually a piece on him in the Athletic. I don't know if you're a subscriber to it there, but Mark Dumont wrote an excellent piece on him there with the struggles of growing up. Didn't have a mom or dad, pretty much. They were kind of deadbeat parents, and was raised by his grandparents actually. And like I said, I'm not going to spoil the whole article, but he has that knock around guy attitude where if you knock me down, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to charge you even harder. Like, and this year, like he was demoted again to the 3 different ECHL teams. Like that's a tough pill to swallow for a young goalie, and he's only 22. But with the Laval this year, when he got called up to the main club there, or pardon me, to Laval there in the HL, he was 3-0 with a 919 save percentage and 233 goals against average, and he was starting to get his rhythm. Like he was starting to make that charge. With Carey Price and now Caden Primo being the 1-2 of that organization, I don't think Charlie Lindgren's going to be around there for too much longer. I don't know if they're going to keep him or not. So if I was Ken Holland, I would take a flyer on that kid because he's a competitor. And looking at some of his game tape, like the kid can play, and like I said, he might be a long shot, just with Drieger, you never know. And he is an RFA, but he's done his entry level contract this year with Montreal. So you might have to flip a draft pick for him if you're like doing the deal with Mark Bergevin, but you never know. And the other goaltender that I kind of had my eye on here in the last little while is Casey DeSmith of Pittsburgh. He still has 2 years, but he's a 1.25 cap hit for them 2 years. Came in relief when Matt Murray was injured a couple of years ago. Did very well in his relief. So he would be a very serviceable 1B or even a 2 guy when called upon to kind of share the duties with Mikko.
Well, we'll have to see what happens, but clearly there's a lot of options there. So I appreciate you breaking those all down. And before we wrap up here, is there anything that you have going on at Rect Hockey that you wanted to discuss before we call it a night?
It's my personal top 5 goalies of all time. A lot of people scream Dominic Hasek. A lot of people will scream Marty Brodeur. I'm not going to spoil the entire article, but it's my top 5 and kind of a tip of the hat.
I have an idea where you're leaning.
Yes, sir. But it's kind of an ode, tip of my hat to the goaltenders out there, just in why I love goaltending as well. It's kind of a whole, kind of, like I said, kind of explain my love of goaltending here tonight. It's kind of leaning on that, plus goalies that I really have a true respect for, because it's a tough position to play. I kind of fizzled out as a young age, like what I explained here before, but you gotta tip your hat to goalies, because boy, you can love them or you can hate them with some people.
No, you know what? If you don't have a good goalie, your team's in trouble. It doesn't matter how talented your team is. And when you do have good goaltending, I think it just gives the guys in front of you so much faith that he's not going to let an easy one in. Your guys are going to be able to go out there and just play. And as long as you're doing your job, he's going to do his job. Like I said, I don't want you to have to reveal your whole article because I want people to go read it. But I will ask your opinion on this. It seemed when I was a kid, so like let's say late 90s, early 2000s, the consensus was that Patrick Waugh was the greatest goaltender of all time. Mm-hmm. And as I got into my teens and early 20s and through my 20s, it sort of shifted to Martin Brodeur, because Brodeur started passing a lot of Patrick Waugh's records.
Right.
And then ever since Brodeur retired, I feel like there has been more and more momentum growing towards Dominic Hasek being the greatest player of all time at the goaltender position. So I'm just curious to you, like he did obviously win the back-to-back Hart trophies in the late 90s, which is an incredible feat for a goaltender to win. Mm-hmm. But I'm just wondering why you think there has been this, I shouldn't say sudden, but why there has been this gradual appreciation for everything Hasek did years after he retired, and why it wasn't there maybe over the past 15 years as opposed to now.
I think I tend to view Hasek I hate to say the term again, knockaround guy. I think a lot of people passed over him at the time. Like just he's kind of like the Rodney Dangerfield of goaltenders. He got no respect. But winning Vezina, I forget how many Vezinas. I think he won about 6 or 7 Vezinas. Never was really on a great team until he moved to Detroit. Like all of them Buffalo teams, they had something going, but they didn't have the right mix. Whereas if you kind of grouped into that position, well, you don't really get the eye-opening respect.
Yeah, he did get those late cups with Detroit in '02 and '08. But
Yes.
when people think about Hasek, they don't think of him with the Red Wings or the Senators late in his career. You think of him like prime Buffalo Sabres late '90s.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that Buffalo should have won the '99 Stanley Cup that flub goal there by Brett Hull, I do believe. And
Yeah.
I, like I said, he's he. I really do have an admiration and a respect for Dominic Hasek for what he's brought to that position. He a very unorthodox style. And you kind of can look to Jonathan Quick nowadays, what he did with the Los Angeles Kings, very aggressive, never say die kind of attitude. They always would just try to keep the puck out of the net. And with Dom, same thing. Like he was a gamer. He would try everything in his power to keep that puck out of the net.
Definitely. And while I wasn't a big Patrick Waugh fan because he didn't play for any of the teams that I really followed or anything, I obviously had a great appreciation for his unbelievable talent. And I think the thing that I appreciate the most is that he denied the Flames a cup in '86. So I don't know if that tied in at all to part of the reason why he became such a Patrick Waugh fan back
Well,
then.
that too, yeah.
It
Well,
doesn't
naturally.
it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. I'm guessing that even if it wasn't Patrick Waugh, you would have cheered for the Habs in that series.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. Like you talk to some people about Calgary and there's a little bit of respect there, like, but when it came down to that growing up in that era of the Battle of Alberta, there was that pit in the stomach type of hate. Like
Yeah.
you hate to see him to win, and you'd love to see the Oilers to knock him off, and vice versa. If you're a Calgary fan, you despise Gretzky, you thought he was a crybaby, blah blah blah. I When it comes down to it, man, like looking back on it, yeah, I can see where the vitriol went because what happened on the ice kind of transpired with the fans, and it kind of grew that legend, kind of grew that mantra with if you're either or fan, you hate each other's guts. So and even in '04 when Calgary played against Tampa Bay, I was rooting for Tampa Bay. Like I just did not want to see Calgary win.
No, I was absolutely too. And the best part about that, other than the Flames losing in the Cup final, was that Corey Sarich brought the Stanley Cup to Saskatoon that summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I, as a 15-year-old kid, got to have my picture taken with the cup, and my dad and I when I was playing bantam hockey at the time, and we had just won city championships in March of that year,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad was the coach of the team too, so we both had our team hats and championship jackets on, and got a picture with the cup in that summer of '04, and that was just awesome. And thank God to the Tampa Bay Lightning for beating the Flames in there for multiple reasons. But just lastly, I want to give you a chance to just talk about your hero to wrap up. For anyone who does say that maybe Brodeur or Hasek is the greatest of all time, make a case for Patrick Waugh for me.
Well, just everybody, you talk to certain people. Well, Marty Brodeur has the most wins, and he's got 3 cups and blah blah blah. And then you go to Dominic Hasek, and he's got a couple cups and Vezinas from here to tomorrow. But with Patrick Waugh, like I said there earlier, he just had like he had cojones. Like when he played the net, like he would come out and challenge you. And looking back on all those cup runs, even the ones that he didn't win, like or didn't get got stopped in the tracks, at least he would rally the team. He would carry that team on his back and try, like I said before, he would do anything to keep your team in the game, type of deal. And with that 86 team, the Montreal Canadiens, I hate to say it because I am a partial Habs fan, thanks to Patrick. They had no business being in that cup final. And they hung around because of Patty's play. Like he would come out and challenge the shooters. He would be at the right spot at the right time, type of deal. And furthermore, he kind of introduced a different goaltending style that most people don't realize. He was the one that put butterfly style into the kind of limelight with the way that he played the game. So for me, he's a bit of an innovator in the sense, like he brought a different flavor to that position. And like I said, like being a 20-year-old, he looked like a giraffe on skates with all that old school goalie equipment there with the really small pads, like they're probably filled with deer hair, and just it looked awkward. But he played his butt off, man. Like he was a competitor right from the get-go.
No, that's. I mean, how can you argue against that? The guy had a legendary career. I think he won 3 Stanley Cups in 3 different decades, right? 86, 93, 96, and 01. So,
yep.
So yeah, that shows just the talent and the longevity there. Sorry, did you want to add one last thing?
I was just going to say, and he's the only goaltender in AHL history that has 3 Conn Smythe trophies. So that's...
And all 3 of them were in different decades too, right?
I do believe so, yes.
Yeah. Because he got it in 86.
Mm-hmm.
And he got 01. Yeah.
Yeah.
And 96, I think, was Sakic.
Oh, maybe. It was
but 93, he got it with Montreal too, right? Yeah.
I think so.
So there, yeah, that makes sense. 4-time Stanley Cup. Maybe that's another thing he has, is that he has more cups than Hasek and Broder as well. But anyway, I really look forward to reading your piece. For anyone who wants to check out your work, first of all, where can they follow you on Twitter, and where can they find your writing?
At Rect Hockey. And the website address is recthockey.blogspot. Sorry. Hang on a sec here. I got to look it up, and I'm all mixed up here.
I want to get the right one in.
Yeah.
WordPress, right?
A WordPress site. Yeah, it's
which I use for my writing as well.
1 second here. It is recthockey.wordpress.com.
For sure, and I can also attach a link to it on when we post the podcast in the next couple days after it gets put up there. So I hope everyone goes out and checks out his work if you're interested in goaltending or just anything else that Kirk's written. So anyway, thank you so much, man. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, and like I said before, man, thanks for having me. It was an honor to be here. This is my first ever podcast, so it was awesome to talk hockey.
Yeah, you knocked it out of the park. Let's do it again.
Thanks, man.
All right. So for Kirk Morris, I'm Eric Friesen. This has been the 99 Forever podcast. We're out.
Oilers Live.